Staying with BRICS news, Minister of Electricity Kgosientsho Ramokgopa says that South Africa has a lot to learn from China in the energy sector. South Africa has signed a memorandum of understanding with 8 Chinese entities to help ease the power crisis locally. While SABC News economics editor Tshepo Mongoai spoke to Ramokgopa after the signing ceremony.
Has been using the hosting of the BRICS Summit to galvanize solution to deal with its ongoing energy crisis. And of course, that has also attracted a lot of businesses from the 4 nations BRICS bloc to come here to lay out the kind of proposals and solutions on how they can actually assist South Africa to deal with its energy crisis. Well, this morning we saw 8 Chinese entities signing the MOU with the minister in the presidency responsible for electricity on various interventions to deal with the electricity crisis. We are now joined by the minister in the presidency responsible for electricity, just to tell us a little bit more about it. Just outline a little bit about the kind of solutions that you will be looking out from these companies that you've signed an MOU with.
Well, first, thank you very much for the invitation and greetings to the viewers at home. So we are dealing with an emergency situation of existential proportions. So it's important that in our response we are able to take steps that are commensurate to the scale of the challenge. So when I started, in addition to visiting the power stations, understanding if you like, the configuration, if you like, of the problem and what the technical solutions are. We also reach out to some of the major missions in the country to see how best can you work with us. The Chinese responded in the affirmative. We also went to China to meet these companies, presented before them the nature of the problem and how we see the best way of resolving it. They were able to respond, come back to us and say, look, there are challenges as we have mapped it with regards to public facilities, hospital, clinics and police stations. We can't exempt some of them. Of course, we have tried our level best, but it's not technically feasible to do that to everyone. So they said we can give you units, packs that can help you generators, gasoline, diesel generators, a combination also of PV and battery storage solutions like energy storage solution, rather like batteries and inverters. So we've got about 552 of those units. 450 of them, as I speak to you, are in transit. In transit, we'll distribute those to clinics and hospitals. They really range from a very small generating unit, 6 kilowatts, to about 200 kilowatts. 200 kilowatts can help us to power a medium-sized hospitals, many of the clinics. So we are in a position to do that. Then the second part is around the resilience. So we need to address the generation side, improve the performance of the installed unit without being in breach of the emissions parameters, especially your carbon dioxide and also your sulfur dioxide. So that's why the Chinese are saying, but there are solutions that we've been working on. We're exposed to a situation. We have resolved similar challenges, so we want to borrow on those solutions. But also the requirement that we train young engineers, technical people within the ranks of ESCOM to learn from that new generation technology. And then there are issues on the transmission side. They are using cutting-edge modern technology to be able to transmit the electrons about 1,200 kVA. That's one of the biggest transmission line in terms of capacity. They have modernized the transmission line, minimized what we call the technical losses. On the generation side, it's also about how do you install technology to alert you when there's a overload on your transformers. There are many communities, as I speak to you, outside load shedding. They just don't have electricity because the transformers and the substations have exploded. So we are working with them on some of those solutions, and the South African population will see the benefit.
Also on generation, the issue of nuclear came on as well as one of the entities it's responsible for that particular area. What should we expect?
Well, of course, we've got the only nuclear power plant on the African continent. What is interesting about this nuclear is that the Quebec power station is that a lot of the technology template that China used as a part of its first generation nuclear power plant, they learned it from Quebec themselves. Those are the first one to admit. But today, they've got 31 gigawatts of installed capacity, while we have 1.9, about 2 gigawatts. So they've been able to increase at a rapid rate. They are using the modern forms of nuclear technology. That's clean technology, very efficient, very reliable. We know about it. So it's important that we draw on those lessons. We know that the IRP does make provision for nuclear as constituting part of the mix. So it's important to know what are the latest technologies, the configurations, so that as we go out, we have an appreciation of what the market can offer.
So in terms of nuclear, are we expecting them to lend their expertise, or are we likely to see some work in terms of generation facilities being built from the scratch?
Well, there are two parts to that. It's also advising the minister, myself, in relation to some of the challenges we're experiencing at Quebec. And then there will be a transparent process if we go out to market to expand the generating capacity, drawing from nuclear. Of course, they've got the right to participate. But it's important that we have an appreciation of the totality of the energy technology solutions in that space, so that as we go out, we know what the market can offer.
This is my final question, just seeking clarity on the grant. I'm sure it's been topical everywhere that South Africa will be receiving from China, about 500 million rand. Just tell us, how is it going to work? What are some of the conditions attached, if any?
Okay, first on the grant donation in relation to the equipment, there are no conditions. Of course, the condition was that once it lands, you take ownership of it. And then we've made sure that it's accredited, it's licensed, the SABC on board, so it's proper equipment. We can vouch for that. Anyways, the equipment they're providing all over the world. On the 500 million one, so those are conversations, says here's a facility, so we'll want to know what the details are. But our historic relationship with them is that first they will not place unreasonable and onerous requirements. We've worked with them before, so we have an appreciation of exactly what is it that they could be looking for in relation to that grant. But the fact that they've been able to raise their hand to say, we understand your problem, here's the equipment, but in addition to that equipment, here's 500 million rand for you to be able to respond. We'll sit with them and determine what those conditions are, if any, and of course we'll make those public. But really we are confident about our ability to find each other and make sure that the South African economy and consumer is not overburdened by some unreasonable condition. Like I said, very realistic within the parameters of reason. Like I said, we've worked with them on these matters before, so we are confident about exploiting that opportunity of the grant.
Okay, thank you very much, Minister. Of course, South Africa really needs money to expand its grid so that the new independent power producers can be able to connect and ensure that we deal with the energy crisis. From me, Tshepo, Mongoai, here at the Santen Convention Sector, is back to you in studio.